Hi everyone, welcome to Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. This should be a lively one. I'm looking forward to this live stream. But before we dive into it, let's introduce everyone to the panel, and we'll do a wristwatch check to kick off. So, Seiko Todd, you're in the hot seat. What are you wearing?
I am. I want to get the model number of this right. Hold on. I didn't want to be first. Dang it. I'll do it here. So I have 3 watches because of the nature of what we're talking about. So I've been wearing the Seiko 6139, 6040. Nice. There we go. From 19 there. I got some good gradient on that dial from 1972.
Is that purple, is it? Or is it just...
It's almost... It's a gradient dial that goes like blue to purple depending on the lighting. Shows you just, again, the type of dials that Seiko was making even back in the early 70s. And of course, this is a, 50-year-old watch. But in light of what we're talking about, I have my 2018, there we go, 2018 Omega CK2998. All right.
Nice. Lovely.
So this is a first Omega in space that wasn't a first Omega in space, right?
The pulsation dial. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. The pulsation. I think it's the most beautiful panda dial I've seen, and that's a difficult thing to necessarily say. But we want to talk about patina. So Seiko Lume doesn't patina because it's saltwater based, and they didn't do tritium. So what it will do is occasionally it'll turn a little brown, but that's rare. Usually it'll mold if it gets a little bit wet, and it'll spot. So this, however, some of their white dials, and this is a Seiko World Timer from the early 70s and a Hiroshi strap from Japan. And you can see real patina. If I can even get even closer, let's have better lighting in here now. Almost. You can see that the dial itself is patinaed. One reason I picked this up at auction is I really like the way that white dial is patinaed. But so we can talk about all of this coming up when Sam talks about being wrong.
Yeah, it's a shame that Pete can't join us. I'm gonna wind him up, even though he's not here if he watches this on the replay. But anyway, Dave, what are you wearing?
Well, I thought I would go for the whole Omega thing. Oh Christ, it won't come off. The whole Omega thing as well. I was going to drag out my 321, but to be honest, I couldn't be bothered finding it. So I'm wearing my. Oh, is it going to focus?
Yeah, you and me both.
There you
go.
Yeah. Is that a Snoopy?
It's a Snoop. See if it's
not
going to play.
That's lovely.
Could be bothered setting another camera. Yeah, so I'm wearing my Snoopy.
Also one of the most beautiful panda dials.
It's pretty cool, yep. And I'm not one of those people who get upset about cartoon characters being on watches. I'm a cartoon, so hey, it's all good.
Yeah. Awesome. Mark, you're up next.
Well, I'm going to break the Omega theme and show this Christopher Ward C60 300 GMT. And it's on the
lovely
Aquaflex strap. Lovely little watch.
Cool watch.
Good
that strap.
I think the bracelet would bulk it out, but I'd never tried an Aquaflex strap. So when I borrowed this from the brand, I got it with the strap just to try it. The Aquaflex strap is great. The watch is fine, but for me, being a bracelet guy, if I was to buy one, I think I'd put it on the bracelet. But the strap is great too.
Okay,
nice.
Good, and we got the Christopher Ward plug in there early as well. We got the quota, the channel's quota of Christopher Ward evangelizing. We got it nice in there, nice and early. Which is Thomas, what are you wearing?
I'm going with the Omega theme as well. I'm the faux patina, but this isn't faux patina. I'm going for original patina, which is my 2996, which is a Seamaster Ranchero. It's got patina all over the place, so it's dark and light, and can't quite make it out there, can you?
But that's earned its patina. That's earned it, which is great.
It's dark and light and all over the place. So it's brings up the question: do you like your patina to be level and equal, and all nice and the same all over, or do you like it dotted all over the place?
Well, yeah,
It should be random, because if it is natural patina, that's going to be random.
There you go. Even though we're not in 3D, I still like move my head then, Thomas, when you did your wristwatch check. Like, whoa. Excellent. So I am wearing a Seiko, and I've gone modern Seiko solar diver. Got it from Mark at Long Island Watches, and I mean I bought it from Long Island Watches. He didn't give it me, but and then I put one of his bracelets on there, which is really good. Nice upgrade, and it actually wears well, so you can tell it's not the real Seiko bracelet that came on it. Okay, let's. But it does have a misaligned bezel, so of
course it does.
It is a true Seiko then.
Yeah, it is a true Seiko.
It's not a fake one.
No, it's not a fake where everything matches.
Right.
It's not a fake, not a fake one. And of course, the minute hand is for some reason a completely unnecessary arrow. So it's all the hallmarks of a nice Seiko. Okay, before we dive in, let's just say, like, Orange Hand, thanks for joining us. Michael, Random Rob sent you. Hey, I tried to message Random Rob to see if he wants to come on. Michael, I don't know how well you know him, but if you can pass along the message. Mark, can I see you? James, Bill, I see you. Brassic Time, and then Kevin, thanks for joining us. Okay, so we're going to choose our own adventure now. Where do we want to start? Do we want to get the Hodinkee news out the way, or do we want to dive straight into Omega? I'll let that.
Let's start off with something fun. Let's get Hodinkee out of the way.
Okay, let's do that.
Because that's a short story.
So let's talk about Hodinkee, who as a surprise to no one that they sold. I don't know whether we were necessarily expecting watches of Switzerland to buy them, but good news for everyone. Now Hodinkee is completely impartial and won't be pushing specific watches from specific brands. So that's always good to know. Anyway, I'll pass it over to the panel. First reactions here. Ben did do quite a good write-up, and also Britt Pierce, she did a good video on this as well. So I'll leave a link to the comments down below.
No surprise at all.
No surprise.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Hodinkee have, I don't know how you want to phrase it, we'll say lost their way, but we'll leave it at that as a broad definition. They kind of rode the wave of the last 10 years, and to be fair, plenty of people made some money, and they kind of ran out of steam. And I think when they talked about less than a couple of months ago, Ben Clymer kind of said, we're going to kind of try and roll back, be more like we were in the old days. I think everyone said your chances of doing that are pretty slim. You've burnt your bridges, you've kind of lost your credibility, and actually, it's not easy to go back to what you were. So I think that in itself led me to believe at some point something's going to happen. They've had a pretty solid fire sale to get rid of inventory, so you knew that they were serious about getting out of at least the new side of the retail. And to be honest, Watches of Switzerland is the perfect partner, because they are one of the biggest watch retailers in the world, certainly in the UK, certainly in the US now, and in other markets. And frankly, their social media, pardon my French, is shit. They've got a really poor engagement with customers at any meaningful level. Their Instagram's awful. They've tried to do a podcast that turned into like some terrible infomercial type thing. They've got very little in the way of social outreach that's good with gravitas and meaning and folk take seriously. So actually they're effectively buying themselves a pre-packaged gig. If it comes with Crown and Caliber, that rolls straight into their pre-owned business that they're pretty solidly in with. Obviously, they bought James Lambden's business a couple of years ago now, so they can kind of boost it up with that. I think it makes perfect sense. It's probably a really good get out for both parties, and fair play. It means they both survive. It means Watch of Switzerland get a pre-packaged social media outfit, and Hodinkee get? I don't know whether saved's too strong a word, but broadly saved.
Very well
everything-
summarised. Very well summarised, Dave.
And
Can we move on to the Omega now? Can we move on to the Omega now?
Everything I was about to say, everything that Dave said, and another good article was Rob Corder's article on Watch Pro. He's much more on taking it onto the business side, but he had a good article on it too. The question is, Hodinkee is strong at text, but are they strong at video? So that's something I think both parties will have to work on. But it saves the name of Hodinkee. I think the structure, as with all acquisitions, once the structure settles out, I think there'll still be changes. But for Watches of Switzerland, it gives them a reasonably well known or a reasonably experienced team. It'll help their social media side. So I think it's good for everybody.
Yeah, I think Hodinkee.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, look at their Instagram.
They're a household name for watch nerds, aren't they? And I think Ben Clymer did some great stuff in the early days, before all the talking what was it, Talking Watches series.
Talking Watches,
did.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think he did some good stuff. And I'd be interested to know if maybe, I know that Jack Forster went to the 1916 company and he's now recently gone to Revolution to do some articles. I'd be interested to see if maybe he'd be tempted back to do a few articles with them if they could afford him, maybe, but
I mean, bear in mind the other thing is no one knows how much they paid for it.
Yeah, right. I was wondering.
Exactly.
And it's a private deal. I'm going to guess it's not a lot of money.
I'd be interested
I don't
to
think
know whether
in a position of negotiating.
I'd be interested to know whether it was Watches of Switzerland stock that he was paid with.
I mean, entirely possible, but I don't think Watches of Switzerland will have been in the bottom of their pockets paying for this by any stretch.
No,
but even if you just look, official Watches of Switzerland Instagram account, 82,000 followers. Okay, pretty solid. I think anyone here would be quite happy to have 82,000 followers on Instagram. Yep. Hodinkee, 1 million plus. They've bought themselves effectively a prepackaged deal.
Yeah, and I think as well, reading the article as well, it sounded like Ben's got the golden handcuffs back on. It sounds like he's now tied to. I would imagine he became as part of the deal that they did. Yeah. Like he would have to stay on for a period of it. That's how I read it. Let's see what we've got coming through here. So Orange Hand says, if you're watching.
Be interesting to know how long Ben sticks around. That's one.
Well, he'll be.
Well, actually, no. To be honest, yeah. I think he'll be back long term now. I think at the end of the day, let's be honest, he'd stepped back. He had broadly stepped back. He was there as a figurehead, masthead, whatever you want to call him. He kind of floated around in the background. But what they've done for the last few years, he had very little of what was there in the past, and I think actually. He has a real desire. It's his baby at the end of the day. Let's remember that, absolutely. And I don't think he wanted to see it fail. I think he wanted to see it succeed. I think he's realised it got to a point that it went in a direction that maybe, with hindsight, you maybe wouldn't have done it or whatever. And I think he'll be back quite happily being back as well because he gets to do what he actually enjoys.
Without the pressure of So Orange Hand said, if you're a Watches of Switzerland shareholder, guessing the ROI of the acquisition would be questionable at best. They should have hired Andrew Morgan. Yeah, I mean, if they want more top 10 lists, they should have gone for it. Yeah.
I mean, but remember, Andrew Morgan, in the same way, Andrew Morgan wanted out to do his own thing. And, Andrew's doing very successfully. Thank you much doing his own thing. And the difference is Andrew Morgan wouldn't have been cheap. I think in the broad scale of these things, I would suggest that this was not a particularly expensive acquisition.
If you look at the David Remus post, and either of them, but I think he's quoting directly in that the terms of the deal were not disclosed. The group said the acquisition will be funded out of existing financial facilities and not material impact its leverage position. This was not an expensive acquisition.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I wonder if they.
I mean, Watches Switzerland aren't exactly poor either.
No, 1.5 billion.
They've got cash.
Yeah,
exactly. But everything about this says it works out mutually well for both parties, and probably not a whole lot of cash needed to change hands. It was a case of, actually, does this work for you? Yeah. Does this work for you? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. It seems more like a coming together that actually works out well for both of them, rather than some kind of grandiose financial acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
cool.
we talked previously about how social media outlets and ADs or retailers go well together, hand in hand. We've got 1916 company and I've forgotten who they're with now.
Watchbox.
Goodberg. Well, they dabbled with TGV, but that didn't last long. But they've got Jack Forster now, and
Right.
so there's Watchfinder with Andrew Morgan. There's now this setup, which is it seems that retailers like to have as Dave was saying, a social media outlet.
Yeah,
I think they've both got the same problem. The problem is, if you're a Hodinkee and you go into retail, you get slammed with you've sold out, you're shilling the brands, you've kind of lost credibility as a media outlet. Whereas if you are a retailer, you're not hiding that you're a retailer. And if you start to produce some interesting content, then actually you're doing the same thing effectively, yeah. But they suddenly get, oh, you're talking about brands you don't sell. How that's really good of you, So actually, when a retailer starts to do that kind of media coverage, they tend to get, if they do it well, they get, oh, that's really good. You're being kind of very generous to the industry. Whereas when it's the other way around, like Hodinkee did, you suffer the consequences.
Yeah, they call it I think marketing, they call it like depositing in the emotional bank account, don't they? They're actually offering value for free in the terms of Hodinkee, which will make you think of
Give me a few seconds. I need to vomit.
Right. Before you do that, Muhammad Ali, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. They really appreciate it. He says, no need for Hodinkee. I get my news from Casual Watch Reviews.
Oh dear.
There you go. So no, thank you very much.
Cheers,
always appreciate the super chats. They definitely help keep the lights on.
I mean, he gets news. Whether it's accurate or not, it's an entirely different thing.
Exactly. It's an opinion-based casual conjecture reviews.
It is
awesome. Let's have a look. So Orange Hand says, so LVMH had a stake in Hodinkee, so they essentially dumped their stock to Watches of Switzerland. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, they did actually, didn't they? They got
actually, he got I think Ben Clymer actually clarified that, because someone said, I assume then LVMH is out, and he did reply in one of his posts and said, yes, we're an entirely owned entity by Watches of Switzerland Group now.
Yeah.
I wonder how much they lost.
Bear in mind as well, it wasn't LVMH. It was
LVMH Incubator
Group.
Okay.
It was kind of like a wing of a wing of a wing. It just made it good headlines because LVMH was in the title.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I wonder if they had this in the works when they were fire sailing those watches off. I bet they didn't, or it hadn't quite come to. You think, because I wonder why they wouldn't just roll the stock to Watches of Switzerland. Maybe it's just because of the way that they bought them or the contracts they have with the brands.
It could also just be liability in terms of, where the financial pigeon lay, like if there's no money involved, they probably just want to get rid of it. And also, let's be honest, the market's not the healthiest it's been in the last 5 to 10 years. Watches of Switzerland's a group probably don't want a huge ton of inventory being dumped on them either.
Yeah, but they devalued a lot of brands, didn't they, temporarily, like Braemon. I mean, they were giving, and Oris, they were giving those away practically, which is good for anybody that managed to get one. Also, and then they ended up dropping the Ed Sheeran, didn't they?
I think it's a good move for both parties, in general. I think it's a good move for, like as Dave was saying, you got your social media half and you've got your retail half, and I think it works for both parties in a good,
Yeah.
good move all round, really.
Awesome. Okay. And and Brit did a really good video giving her opinion on this as well. I watched it before. Very, very well produced stuff. Okay, should we leave it there, or any final thoughts on Hodinkee?
Let's start the real fight.
The good news is that they've not gone the way that some folk predicted they might, which was up the chimney. You know, they've managed to turn it around, and actually, if what he says is going to happens, then it will probably be more like Hodinkee was. It won't be the same, but it will be more like it was, because if they do manage to get themselves completely removed from brand alignment in terms of retail, then it opens the doors for them a little bit. So let's see what happens. But fair play to them.
Yeah, that's a good point, because they didn't have like the hubris to kind of run it into the ground because they thought they could save it themselves. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. I wonder how their collaborations will go in the future with different watch brands, and if they'll carry on doing those, you know.
They will do.
Yeah,
who knows?
Forbes did a pretty good article too. It's pretty short, by Anthony DeMarco, but what's most appealing to it is Ben Clymer. Is a big picture of Ben Clymer in the front of it, and he kind of has this little Mona Lisa smile going on, like, "Yeah, I knew you'd be back." You know, slightly smirky. Yeah, so it's good for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right then. Okay, so let's let me get rid of all this. Now on to the kind of main event here. Let me just pull up. Hang
on. Before you start, Sam, get Mark on a leash. Get Mark on a leash before you start this.
Okay. Well, I think I have some strong opinions on this one as well, which will be interesting. But we'll pull up Hodinkee to keep in with the tradition. So this week, Omega released the first Omega in space, Speedmaster Return, and it's caused quite the column inches, quite the number of YouTube videos. We've not yet talked about it, but I have thoughts. Mark, you also saw this in person, so you can give us a real on the spot report. But I won't kick this off. Who wants to kick this off for us? The new Omega.
Shall I tell my story?
Please
go from us.
Yes, you saw it in the flesh. You should open up.
So I have seen it in the flesh. I went to my local Omega boutique yesterday, and with the intention of seeing if they had a first Omega in space. And I walked through the door, and they go, "Oh, Mr. Wheeler, are you here to see the first Omega in space? Sit down, have a cup of coffee. We'll show you one." So kudos to Omega, and I know they've been doing this more and more. They've figured out that they have to get watches into the stores when they make the announcement, and they've been very good at that. They haven't always been very good at that, but they are getting watches in the stores. Not many, perhaps. And the first Omega in space, I've seen it. It's a very nice watch. The mid case is spectacular. The dial is spectacular. They do so much of this right. And then you get to this picture, and where I have more issues. And why I didn't buy it, aside from being broke, I think the loom doesn't suit the watch. I think it's heavy-handed, and it kind of spoils the overall look of the watch. I gather from conversations with the boutique that I am not the only customer who has said this. They were showing it to VIP clients. They've had it for 3 or 4 days, and they still had it in the store. So on a very, very small sample size, the loom is divisive. It's causing some degree of friction.
Yeah.
At that point, I will hand it over to the other side of the coin.
Yeah, because I'm on your side.
This is such a spectacular watch. You look at it from the side, you look at it, it's so well done, and then they bollocksed it up.
Yeah. So you're saying that it's too dark of a hue of
Yeah,
basically.
they have, there's nothing wrong with having an off-white loom. I own watches myself that have off-white loom. This seems to be more of a pastiche color than it needed to be. They turned the dial up to 11. They tried to make a modern, true homage of the CK2 998, and they could have done that. They came so close, but they went a bit too far with the loom. Sort of. I saw it, and I'm just sitting there with my credit card out, going, "Oh no! Why does it look like Why does the loom look like the espresso I've got next to me, with the Kramer on top? That sort of orangey color. It's just too much."
I'm with before we pass it over to the panel. I'm with Mark. I think the loom ruins it. Honestly, I can. Yeah, it's such a shame, because if you're going to recreate a watch, brand new case, new dial, new hands, and everything, then you want it, and it's supposed to resemble or homage an original watch. The original watches didn't come with a Fotina loom, did they? They came with a white loom, and I think they've gone way heavy-handed with it. I mean, I've only seen the pictures of it, but I actually think to me it looks like this. It looks like when you take a new car and put a rust wrap on it. It's like if you've got a rat rod that is an old car that's rusted, that is supposed to look rusted, then fine. But to me, putting Fotina on it makes it look like you've taken a brand new car and put a rusty wrap on it. I just cannot fathom. I mean, I know why they've done it. I can fathom why they've done it, but to me, it is just not what it just. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame. That's my view. I'll pass it over to the rest of the panel.
I like it.
Yeah,
it really doesn't upset me. It really doesn't upset me. I mean,
yeah.
I think as a watch, the Fotina is always going to be 50-50, let's be honest. Some folk love it, some folk hate it. It's just one of those divisive things. But as a watch, it's got so many pluses going for it. And before I'll preface this by saying it's not cheap, but it is cheaper than a standard.
It is cheaper than a
sapphire sandwich moonwatch, which is a good thing. I think it is the 321 for the masses, and I know that sounds really terrible, but the 321 is an expensive watch, but this has got a very similar feeling vibe to the 321. I think it's about 6,600 euros, something like that.
It's 2 or 3 in the US. It's $200 or $300 less than a Speedy Professional.
Yeah,
pretty sure it's 6,600. Yeah, so €6. I think it's a great looking watch. I think for people that want something a little bit earlier looking than the kind of Moonwatch or the Speedmaster Professional, which really at the moment all that ticks that box is that 321, but the 321 is at least double the price of this. And this though gives you everything you want from a modern.
And the 321 is still very, very hard to get.
Absolutely. Right. But this gives you everything modern you want. You've got the modern movement with META certification. You've got the step dials back in there. You've got that 38.6, 38.88 case or whatever. You've got the kind of more symmetrical feel and look to it rather than the professional case. It's got that new flat link bracelet on it. There's so many nice things going for it. And the loom honestly doesn't upset me. I don't mind it. I think I think without it, if it was a white loom, I think the danger would be it would be trying to recreate something from the past, but it would look too new, which sounds strange, but it just would be too clinical. And as you can sometimes say that about the 321. The 321 looks very modern sometimes when you look at it. But I quite like it. I mean, could they have gone slightly less tobacco or coffee colored? Maybe,
yeah,
but
that's what I'm thinking too. I wish
after a while.
Yeah, I wish the shade were a little bit lighter. Without having seen it in person, I can't comment on how orangey it is. It looks like it matches the dial of my Seiko World Timer almost exactly. But yeah, I mean, I'm with Dave. I like it. The 321 you're never going to mass produce because it's kind of a hand-built watch and movement. If it were me, I think a slightly off white loom would have been preferred, but this doesn't discourage me it doesn't help the watch for me to want the watch. But what Dave said, everything else is I also agree with, but it doesn't discourage me from maybe looking at this as a possible acquisition. I'm trying to get a US price on it now through my AD that handles used to have a boutique in watch in Little Switzerland down in St. Thomas. Used to have a boutique of Omega. They brought in a Breitling boutique instead, but they can still get Omega, whatever models are available. So I'm trying to see how much it would cost.
I was actually told by the boutique that this is a full series watch. It's in the line. It's not limited production, but it's not going to be in high rate production. They're not going to make as many a month of these as they would a standard moon watch. It's going to be in short supply for for at least 6 months.
Yeah. It's
so that's the thing. If they don't sell them, it'll not be in short supply.
Well, unless of course they were expecting a whole bunch of their VIP clients to hoover them up, and if that doesn't happen, they'll go into they'll be available more quickly. I was told that we're on the boutique I was at is only showing it to VIP clients at the moment.
Yeah, I think as well. They made a heritage model where they put their Fotina on it, right? So what I don't like about this is that not all of them went like this anyway. It's not all of them patinaed like this anyway. So it's not like it's recreating something that happened to all of them. I think a white loom, because at the end of the day, it is a tool watch. Like that's the thing about the Speedmaster. It is a precision instrument for telling the time. The way the hands are precise, the subdials are precise, the fact that the subdials are white. It was always like it was arguably one of the best tool watches ever made. So to put because I see Fotina as like a silly trend that's been going on for far too long. So to put a trend on a watch that is actually is a classic design that to put a silly trend on a watch that's going to have multiple years. It's a classic design that's always in fashion. Do you know what I mean? Like when Fotina goes out of fashion, the design of the watch, the layout of the hand, the Speedmaster is such a classic design. It never goes out of fashion. So to put a fashion trend on it, to me, is like a step too far with this. To be quite honest, somebody actually said something. I forget. I think Chili Badger was basically like, I wonder if the Fotina will patina and sort itself out. Yeah, so if they made it so it goes white eventually.
Yeah, they're obviously satisfying nostalgia, cool factor, vintage styling. In a modern product without the headaches of a vintage product breaking down. And there's been loads of watches with faux loom in the past, and I can think of a couple like the Blancpain Barracuda, 50 Fathoms Barracuda had a faux loom on it, which I thought that looked great. I think all the Longines Heritage military, the 1930 military 1938 had faux loom, which looked great. You get some.
I think the Railmaster even had that similar.
The Railmaster,
the No Time to Die.
No Time to Die.
I think for me, remember, one of the big downsides of modern watches, there's lots and lots of upsides, by the way. The quality of manufacture nowadays compared to even 20, 30 years ago is night and day.
Absolutely.
But nothing that's made now will age in any meaningful way. You'll get some scratches and some dinks on the case, but actually the dials are so heavily stabilized now, you could leave it out in the sun for decades and it'll probably barely change.
Yeah.
And if it does change, it will be an error rather than, anything. It was habitual. If you left any old dials from 20, 30 years ago in the sun, they all faded. Aluminium bezels faded, etc., etc. But people buy vintage watches now because they like that look, as you said, Thomas. They like that dated look. And if you want to buy a new watch and have all the benefits of a new watch, but like that aesthetic, what's your option? This.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? It belongs on an old watch. Like, for example, the one company that doesn't do this silly trend is the company that watches go up in value based on how the previous models patinaed, isn't they? Rolex would never be caught dead putting like a Fotina like this on one of their watches, would they? Even though their vintage models are coveted for the hazing of the hazing of the dials, the lacquer, the way the bezels faded and stuff like that. They wouldn't like cheapen.
But at the same time,
by...
but at the same time, Rolex don't issue reissues.
Yeah,
no.
But this isn't a reissue.
Well, let's be honest, Mark. This is a pretty heavy internal homage to the original. They're not.
But that's a homage, and it pays respect to. It's not a copy.
And I think it's
not far away.
Some of the details, but then they left some of the significant details, like the lollipop on the second hand off.
Okay. Yeah.
So and God knows what the original size was. I didn't spend that much time.
This was exactly the same size as the Mark 1 CK2998.
Oh, okay.
Which I love. I love this size.
But it's also weird because the first one in space was a Mark 2, not a Mark 1.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I think
they've been playing games even with their own archive for this, I think.
Exactly. Even the
dial color
uses a vintage style loom, apparently.
I think it's funny because and NASA wouldn't have picked. I think it's funny because if NASA had been presented with that watch and the loom had already decayed on it, like the original, they probably wouldn't have picked it for space, would they? Would be like, oh, that loom's defective.
Well,
and now you're sort of like not evangelizing, but you're immortalizing in the history books a defect in the loom or the way that loom behaved over time. I don't think it adds to a tool watch. I think it's a gimmick.
But
bear in mind, this is not a tool watch anymore, though. It's a $7,000-8,000 luxury watch.
Right. People buy it because of that romance, though. I mean, it's like a dive watch, isn't it? You want it to have dive chops, even though you're not, though like wearing it in the shower is about as extreme as mine go. Mine go, but you still want it to have that.
I think they've done some beautiful things with it. The flat link bracelet, the straight lugs, the alpha hands, the applied logo. All lovely features, lovely touches, harking back to the original. I think we're forgetting all those things and we're just focusing on, this coffee-coloured too dark loom. Yeah. And there's a blue-coloured dial as well.
The dial is actually spectacular. It's a dark grey, but if you get it in strong enough direct light, it turns into a sort of beautiful gunmetal blue. The dial is possibly the nicest thing about it. Really, really hard to photograph because even that doesn't go far enough to show how that color flops. The dial is actually computer image
as well, isn't it?
But the dial in real life is spectacular. But if you look at the watch, and I had it on my hand, and they're going, "Oh, buy it," and I'm thinking,
buy it.
At least on that first visit. And maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe I won't. But on that first visit, the thing that stopped me from buying it was the loom color.
Yeah.
Now, whether I'll think the same in 6 months, maybe not. But they would have sold me this on the spot. They would have sold it to me when I wasn't dealing with my normal client advisor, which they really don't like you to do. And, I think they're getting much more pushback on this one specific element of what is actually a great watch than they ever expected.
Yeah, let me share those while you're talking about them, Mark. Sorry, Dave. Let me share those photos that you took actually on the ground. I do
apologize for the quality of these photographs. My iPhone and the lighting don't match.
Yeah, the lighting is tough, I think.
Lighting is terrible in Omega Boutiques.
It is the same as the coffee. Like, I know it's the picture's bad, but it's
you're
not
right
far
about
off
that.
there, is it? It's not far off.
So it's espresso loom. We'll call it, instead of Fotina, we'll call it espresso.
The Italian for that color on the top of an espresso is crema, CREMA. So to me, it's a crema loom. Crema. I also took a picture of it. Or took a picture of if you have cats, you might know what a churro or a squeezy is. It looks the same as that sort of particular soft gel cat food. which really doesn't help center a buying purchase in my head when it looks like cat food. But there is so much that's good about this watch. I really wanted to put my credit card down, but I had that stop because of the loom, and that was it.
I mean, Orange Hand's saying that vintage reissues are like costume jewelry. I wouldn't go that far, Orange Hand.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite go that far.
Yeah, they keep
Into the void. Into the Void says, I don't mind Fatina, but the brown doesn't work for me here. Yeah, he's saying it's too strong. He agrees with you, Mark.
I think Jaime, and you just showing it at the top with his comment. If you could only choose one, which would you choose? The Speedmaster Professional or this FOI or this one? Personally, the first Omega in space wears so much better on my wrist than the Professional does. That I would buy this rather than the Professional. I've tried on Professionals for years. I've never bought one. They just don't sit right on my wrist.
I like it. I had that's the longest watch I had in my collection. Well, one of the second, was the Speedmaster before.
The regular Professional sits well. So I have that from Dean Bump at Little Switzerland, and I've got this, the CK from him also, or my two Omegas from him. But I just love the case size, like you were saying, Mark. The case size on this watch is extraordinary. It just fits my wrist, which is not quite 7 inches, just perfectly well. It's very comfortable. And the little bit of excitement I had just by looking at the pictures, thinking that, okay, here we are in the same case format again with a blue gray dial. Oh my goodness. That would be great. I'm looking too, by the way, at Wally Sierra's watch, a picture of it, and it doesn't have the lollipop on it. It has the straight
second hand. Yeah,
I'm sure I've seen a picture of a 2998 with a lollipop, but
you probably did, because the first reissue of the 2998 in 2016 had the lollipop.
Okay, that may be what confused me.
An original, because there I think there are like 4 or 5 different versions of the CK2998 originally. So I think one of them, which is why, for example, this one, they used the pulsometer scale on it just because it was an option. One of the 3 options for the scales back then. But I'm looking at Wally's watch here. Somebody took a picture of on the Omega forums, and it's the straight, and it's also the straight. The subdials have the straight hands. They do not have the alpha or the sword type hand on them. So that's in addition to what Omega did. Even though this again, CK298 has all 3 hands are the sword style hands on it. You mean like the alpha / sword style hands. So they seem to mix a lot of things here.
Yeah, here's a question. Does anyone know? Because I always associate the Speedmaster for the longest time with tritium, but did they actually ever use radium on the hand? Did those original ones have radium that would have gone brown? Because tritium goes yellow; it doesn't go brown like that. So if they
one looks brown. The Wally's watch looks brown.
Has gone brown,
so maybe it was a radium or like an earlier. Does it
have like 1959? And I don't remember the history of the radium girls well enough.
Right,
but
I don't think they had. I think radium was gone.
I thought radium was gone by then.
By that point, I think they figured out it was a bad thing. It's hard to tell in the picture that they're showing. The lighting isn't great, but the coffee colored or crema colored loom seems to be here on Wally's watch, depending, I guess, on the light. So maybe that's where their inspiration came from, was to pull.
Yeah, so maybe it's like an earlier
that watch. I don't know if you can find a better picture, Sam.
Can you bring up Chrono Crazy's comment as well, Sam? Sorry, it's Mark.
Well, the very easy answer is no. To his question, no, I can't accept that it's.
People get too hung up on Fatina. We're not idiots, and no, it's not a true age loom. Can we accept a loom color? And I mean, and no, we're not talking about proper Fatina here. We're talking about a color choice. On the Overwatch.
Oh, that's right. I mean, like the Black Bay 58 has a sort of a creamier loom, doesn't it? It's
creamier
not like
loom, exactly. Now,
Tudor. But Tudor doesn't have Fatina, really.
JLC have used Fatina in the past on the reverso. They use a lighter patina, and on their Memovox tribute to Polaris, they've used a lighter patina, and it's all down to taste, really, down to what you. Are you really purist? Are you purist that says it only belongs on old antique watches, vintage watches, or are you someone who's willing to say color belongs on all watches?
Well, here's a question to you. Here's a question to you, Thomas. With obviously that age in that brown loom is associated with radium. Radium was like one of the most toxic materials that was ever used. Like countless people died from exposure to it. Like, should it be celebrated like that on a watch?
Well, it's tritium too, as well.
Tritium goes like a yellowy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Tritium's half-life is much, much shorter, and it's also alpha particles, so it doesn't penetrate into the body so much. So even though tritium is harmful, it's nothing like as harmful.
I had a speedy triple date that I ended up selling not long ago that had really beautiful patina on it, and it was kind of brown, and it was a tritium dial. I think it just depends on whatever formulation happened to hit the watch and whatever combinations of UV and everything else that happened to do it. But one thing I was just thinking of that Thomas brought up that made me think about this a little bit more deliberately. I think we're arguing about the interior color of the car a little bit here.
Yeah.
So this is why this doesn't bother me so much. Yeah. It's like I'm able to get the Acura NSX that I want. Let's pretend. And it's everything is perfect about it, but it's got not the right interior color for me. But am I going to reject the NSX for that? Maybe not. Maybe I'll just get used to the interior. Is one way.
Good analogy. Good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and for all that we were hyping it up via text yesterday, that's exactly the point. But
there was a lot of vitriol, everyone. It was a lot of vitriol back and forth.
There was a lot.
Particularly when we went into epistemology. I really must go.
Bald-headed white guys were the ones that were really bad.
Well, Pete's got a full head of hair. Pete's got more hair than all of us put together.
Oh, that's right.
But you're right. This is a deliberate choice Omega made. It would have been informed, and I believe it was informed by a customer, by a number of customer requests. Make the next Omega in space look more vintage. Whether it is as successful as they would have wished because of that choice, that's the game. People will buy it because they love the overall look. People won't buy it because they don't. Are you willing to compromise and live with it, or are you just going to say there will be another lovely Omega in 2 years' time? And
we're going to wait 2 weeks until the next one comes. No, they're not that bad nowadays.
Looking at the patchy loom for sort of patina on my watch now, I think that the balance of the color is really nice, and on this Speedmaster First Omega in Space, and it's nice to have a balance of the color rather than it being patchy and a vintage piece. And color tastes change, and it's some like it, some don't.
Yeah, somebody actually, James Blonde said put green loom on it. That would have been a good choice, I think, if they put like a green on it.
Not against that dial. Not against that dial.
But that's
blue and green should never be seen.
Yeah, but that's my point, Thomas. Like, I feel my opinion on this is, although my opinion not based on necessarily fact, is that I think that Fotina is a trend. I think it's a trend. So I don't. I mean, I'm not going to buy that anyway. So I'm just, we're just making content, aren't we? I don't really care that much about it. But to be honest,
Is that the content or the watch?
The watch. I don't care about. I very much care about the content and all the thankful to everyone that subscribes to the channel.
I'll invoice you for the ladders later.
Yeah, we're putting a trend to me on a watch that is timeless. That's my view.
I mean, you say it's a trend, maybe, but it's a very long running trend. This is not new.
5 years now.
No,
a bit longer than that, but
a little bit longer than that.
10 years.
I mean, that's like 1 second on the dial of like clock manufacturer, isn't it? Even if it's 10 years, that's like a second on the dial of like.
That's more. In fact, it's nearly 20 years. Nearly 20 years. Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far. Because you have to remember that
2008
start off small and then grow. So what you might be seeing, and I thought we'd gone past peak Fotina. So maybe we're on the tail of a trend and it'll just become a norm rather than a trend.
Yeah.
I hope not.
I think it's more just a modern way to give that slightly older vintage style look that otherwise, to be honest, unless you dive into the pool of vintage watches, which is fraught with danger for many reasons for most people, whether it's cost, whether it's risk, whether it's service and all these things, it's a way to buy a nice modern watch with that feel and vibe about it, and there's not really any other option now. So I don't think it'll go away. I think it'll still be used sparingly. It's not going to be a mainstream lume collar, but I think brands that probably brands like, I can see Omega carrying it on. I'll see brands probably like Breitling and some of these guys carry it on, where they do a lot of nod backs, even Tudor, a lot of nod backs to older models that people want one of. They're all at it. Rolex won't, because to be honest, Rolex don't actually look back. They just don't. They're just incrementally moving forward. But I think it will stick about because there's a real demand for that feel and vibe of watches, and it sells.
And
Rolex number one.
Philosophically, it makes sense. This is an evocation of a watch from the late 50s and early 60s. So philosophically, I can see why it makes sense. I personally don't, and I'm with Von Krul about this, although I might express it a different way. I don't want it to look old before it's got old in my hands.
Yeah, Mark Akin says the whole point of a watch is to look at the dial. The dial color palette is vital, and that's right, Mark, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah. I think that was to your comment, Todd, wasn't it? About you saying it's just the interior of the car, which is
To me, that's why this isn't a killer. So if I could potentially get this watch, I think now for a reasonable price, I might pull the trigger. We'll see.
If you don't object to this one particular element, be very careful getting your hands on this. It is a great watch. Nice. Trust me on that. It is a superb watch.
Super nice.
It is super, super nice.
And
the only thing I don't know.
The killer line as well. It looks like ripped jeans, Fotina. Sorry, Mark.
So the only thing I don't know is whether this comes in special packaging.
Oh
yeah.
I think it's a CK. It's a similar to the older CK 2998 box.
Yeah, CK 2998.
Rip the box.
Wasn't crazy. It's not like the.
It's a lovely coffee colored box.
Yeah,
and it's ripped. The box is ripped and torn.
Like Fender back in the day. I remember my dad was really in guitars, and they went through a phase. They made amps that they put like fake coffee stains and stuff like that, or like they put stickers on it. So they should rip the box, shouldn't they? Or or have the flock that comes off in your hands, like those early Omega boxes that basically self-destructed with the glue that would stain them. Yeah, the self-destructing.
It went yellow.
Somebody said I was. Von Krul said I was giving the game away. What I meant was that I'm just giving my opinion on this watch. I'm not like, I'm not dying on this hill, basically.
I was going to say, Sam, you're trying to dig yourself out of the hole that you dug.
All subjective.
It's not working.
Hey, it's my show, and I will dig myself out of the hole if I want to.
There you go. Here's a vintage box. We can put them in this, and
Yes, yeah,
How's
with the logo. The sub.
the logo.
I saw that. Yeah. Oh, I haven't got a photo of it. I saw that great Omega. In fact, let me see if I can get a photo of this great Omega watch that I saw at the weekend. Let me see if I can find the photo of it. Yeah.
It smells like my grandfather did. It's like
I've heard it being compared to the Ed White as a sort of poor man's Ed White. What do you think to that, Dave?
Oh, it definitely.
A poor man is the wrong phrase to use for any watch at 6,000 or 7,000, to be honest with you. But it's let's be honest, it's a much more accessible, whether it's just by availability or by price, compared to the 321 Ed White, which is what I don't know what it is these days. Must be in
14,000
euros
quid or something.
It's about 14,000, 15,000 UK euros. In US, it's probably 16, 17. It's nigh on double the price, and it's harder to get your hands on. And to be honest, the Ed White comes with a whole load of issues, and I mean issues in the metaphorical sense, but it's not a modern movement. It's a reissue of that old 321. It's not got any of the technical nuances of this movement that's in this watch. This is an infinitely better movement than even the reissued 321 from a technical perspective. Better power reserve, better everything about it. So this is a lovely package. If you like that aesthetic and look, this is, I think, one of the better value things that Omega have put out in the last few years.
Here's my Omega I spotted yesterday. If we've got look at that dial. Look, that's no patina on that.
Even the hands look like they've got decent lume.
They have. The hands have got lume. All of the cards may be slightly weathered, but
so Dave, do you have one of these in your collection?
Speechless.
It's on a NATO as well.
That's just premium.
I spotted that in a great watch shop in local to me. I had to. It's one of those wedding watches. Is it? Was it marriage watches or wedding watches?
It's a marriage watch. Yeah,
marriage watch.
I think that dial is certainly fake, but we won't go into that.
How could it
what
be
gives that away? Really?
The Omega logo doesn't look right. I don't know.
Oh, that's the tell, is it? That's the that was the. Yeah,
that's huge. Sure, but I don't know.
Anyway, it's awesome. Well, that was a very, very lively discussion. And let me see if we've got any final comments. There's no more. That
Mark N's comment is amusing.
Which one? It's true, but my wife looks hot in. Oh yeah, this one. My wife looks hot in pre-ripped jeans. No, I do. Yeah, I do like the look of it. I'm personally not a fan of. My opinion is that I'm not a fan of the age.
You don't like it because it doesn't have a date. Come on, let's come back to
that. Well, that was the only dateless watch that I wore for like 10 years, the Speedmaster. But yeah, I do like the date on a watch. They do, and then they do make one, don't they? They make that 1957 one that doesn't have the age.
I have the 1957 Broad Arrow with the date. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe the George Clooney watch. Maybe I'll buy that. Although he does also promote coffee, doesn't he, as well? So maybe, maybe there'll be age loom on that. There'll be Nespresso collab. Although it didn't Hublot do an Nespresso watch. Anyway, I'm going off.
So that's clearly where they got the idea for the loom color. Then George Clooney's coffee company.
Yeah, George Clooney's coffee. Yeah, it's like a limited edition collab with Nespresso. It's like a stealth promotion.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. Awesome. Okay. Any final thoughts, anyone, before we wrap up this lively debate?
If you get the chance to see one of these,
have a look
because it really is a superb watch.
I want to see it in the flesh.
Yeah,
but it's going to be dangerous to your bank account if you do see it in the flesh.
Yeah, I went into, well, I didn't. I stuck my head into the local boutique near us just to have a look, but I don't go in there because I love Omega watches, and I don't want to get talked. Well, it wouldn't take much talking, to be quite honest, to talk me into them. But anyway, awesome, cool, guys. Thank you so much for watching. A big thanks to the panel. Thank you for the lively discussion. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great week,
Take it easy.
everyone.
Have a great weekend.